Merkel Media.
What does the goddamn line say, Tony?
Please do not use gendered language.
Then what? I'll be arrested, put in airport jail?
Look, you're going completely sideways, man.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
How dare you?
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
I'm Chris Hansen with Day by NBC.
Jack Marius Tactheratrix.
Hi, I'm Spartacus.
Jackson, Sacramento.
Steven Seagal.
Sex offender guy.
I'm Keith Morris.
This is Mumbai.
James, bitch.
Sorting through the lies.
The hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
We cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
World domination.
Learning about Cuba, having some food.
Let's talk about Chinese people.
Have you ever been in a Turkish prison? Swing.
Of my Libyan missiles to blow up the CS hardware department.
Nothing could be more fun than jumping off a cliff with two German bisexuals.
Oh, you English are so superior, aren't you?
Thank you, comrade.
And now, macroaggressions.
That's what assholes call it.
With your host,
Buddy, I don't know who you are, but you're about to get chlamydia.
Charlie Robinson.
Hey, Whitey, where's your hat?
You want to drop the blame on Charlie and say it's all Charlie's fault.
He was a retard.
I get some goddamn diuretic.
Welcome to Macroaggressions. I'm your host, Charlie Robinson. If you are watching us on Band.video, Odyssey, Rockfin, Vigilante.tv, or you're listening wherever podcasts are served, thanks a million. We appreciate your support. We know you have a lot of choices out there. If you want to connect with me, the website is the octopus of globalcontrol.com. You can find me on Twitter at macroaggression. Hey, thank you so much to the wonderful sponsors that we have. We couldn't do this show without them. Legal Shield has been in business for 50 years. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, and they are available in Canada and the United States. I really suggest you take a look at them. Go to the website that we built with them. www.don'tgetpushedaround.com is where you can find everything. Look, it's the collective buying power of all of us directed towards high-powered law firms in your area. It just makes it way more affordable for you to have a lawyer, to look over contracts, to do medical powers of attorney, financial powers of attorney, to do your will. All that stuff costs a lot of money, but you got to have it done. And if you don't have it, you need it, but you don't want to spend a couple $1,000 to do that. So the best way to sort of get your money's worth and to get your foot in the door would be to sign up for their program over at Legal Shield. It's $30 a month. It's $1 a day. And right off the bat, you sign up, make an appointment with the law firm in your area, tell them what you're looking to do. You want to get these documents knocked out, set up an appointment, and go and do that. That'll be the thing that you take care of early on this year, just so that you've got it. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to worry about it. Nobody wants to plan. You don't want to plan for your death. But what's worse, dying without a will and letting the state get involved in your affairs and starting to dictate what happens with your stuff. You don't want that. Be proactive, not reactive. Take care of this stuff. If you have questions about your legal rights, you have an app on your phone. You can just send messages to your attorney. Say, I have questions about this. Legal documents. Work wants you to sign something weird having to do with some new medical component to your employment contract because, we're all going to die from a virus. So, you're not really sure, send it to them. You got a speeding ticket, you think it was kind of fishy, send it to them. You have questions about an IRS audit, send everything to them. You now have an attorney, and it's really affordable. And it's not limited to just that. There's Identity Shield. There's small business legal plans too. If you run a small business, you don't have a law division in your small business. It's just you and maybe a couple people, but you do have representation now. It's very reasonable. If you carry a gun, they have documentation for that as well. So look, all I'm saying is do this. Go to the website, check it out for yourself. See what you think. See if it fills a need that you're looking for. This service is fantastic. I really highly recommend it. So do this. Go to the website, don'tgetpushedaround.com. Check it out. See if it's right for you. And also, our other sponsor, or one of our other sponsors, Chemical Free Body. It's that time of year, right, where everyone has New Year's resolutions and they say, this year I'm going to get fit. I hope you do. It is 100% up to you. It's preventable. It's fixable. If you're overweight, if you're feeling sluggish, if you feel bad, it's terrible. And nothing is worse than feeling sick all the time. But it's fixable. That's the good news. But you just have to make the decision. It's nobody's going to be able to do this but you. So if 2023 is the year that you finally take control of your health, go to chemicalfreebody.com and do a little shopping. See what you think over there. I know the products work. Tim James, the owner, knows the products work. He wouldn't offer you a double your money back price guarantee if the products didn't work. Okay? They absolutely do. The question is, are you willing to take them? Are you willing to take them every single morning? I'm coming up in a couple months. I will be hitting the 3-year mark where I've been taking their products. I have never felt better. Okay. It leaned me out in a way that was a little bit frightening, to be honest. That was the detox bundle, the gut detox, the toxin detox, ultra enzymes, and listen, I tell you, and Green 85, of course, every morning, the green drink that you stir up in water and just drink. I don't eat enough vegetables, admittedly, and I use this to kind of supplement that. If you are in a position where you think that you want to get your health back on track, chemicalfreebody.com, promo code MACRO on your way out to save yourself a little bit of money. I think it's the time. You'll be sorry if you don't take care of your health. This is what this show is about being proactive instead of being reactive. Well, I'll tell you what, this topic that we're going to get into has been one that's really fascinated me. I remember watching, it's about China, and it's about their ambitious infrastructure projects. And I remember watching a documentary, God, and it must have been like 20 years ago. And it was a documentary about how China was going to build the Three Gorges Dam, right? This is their big project, the big infrastructure project. They have these rivers that sort of converge in this one area. And they are, they said, well, if we were to put a hydroelectric power plant here, a really big one, it could generate so much energy that we could use it to power this Chinese empire that we're building out, this manufacturing empire. It's going to be helpful. And I remember thinking, oh, this is crazy. All the things they have to do. They had to like divert rivers, and then they had to so that they could build this dam. And it took like 15 years for them to do it. And it used like a third of all the concrete in the world. And, crazy numbers, right? And then it was done, now it's done and it's operational. It's not really well built, but it is functional. And so China has big plans, and they're very ambitious, and they don't just build one dam. They build a dam that's like 3 kilometers long, it's massive. And so that everything is big. They say everything's big in Texas, but really everything's big in China. And because they've got a big population and they have a lot of needs, they have a lot of power needs. Well, it's changed now. They still have those needs, but now they want to do something a little bit more ambitious. A project that's going to take them, a quarter of a century to really get to a point where it's built out in a way that benefits them. And that is the Belt and Road Initiative. This is a project that has been on the drawing boards for a very long time. Well, put it to you this way: the Three Gorges Dam was was an idea that was thrown around in the 40s by China. They brought in the guy that built the Hoover Dam to take a look at their topography and say, in your opinion, how would you go about building this? And that was in the 40s. And then things got delayed and it didn't wind up happening for another 6 decades. But they have these ideas and they intend to complete them. And the Belt and Road Initiative is one of them. It's being called sort of the slang term for it is the New Silk Road. So, and the original Silk Road was was part of the Han Dynasty, which was 200 BC through about 220 AD. So it was like a 420-year period where the Han Dynasty ruled China, and they built out the Silk Road, which went through Central Asia. So they were connecting large pieces of land, over 2,000 years ago. So they've done this before. They intend to do it again. They want to be dominant in global trade. They already are dominant in global manufacturing. Their economy is set to pass that of the United States in the very near future. Their population is set to be actually surpassed by India later, I think this year. I don't know. Who knows how they even calculate all that stuff. But so China is a player, right? And we know this, and we see, we see their ambitions. And I've been to China, and it's weird. Mainland China is Hong Kong, or which is sort of like China light. Hong Kong is fantastic. Cool. I mean, I would suggest that there's more people in Hong Kong that speak English than in Los Angeles. So if you're afraid of going to Hong Kong because you're like, I don't know if I don't speak Chinese. Am I going to be able to get around? You'll be able to get around fine. The British colonized that place had it for 100 years. Everything's written in English. Everyone speaks English. You'll be fine. But mainland China, that's a different story. And Shanghai, where I spent a week there, is I felt like I was like on the set of Blade Runner. I remember going up to the rooftop deck of the hotel where we were staying, and you could get a good view. It was a really tall building. You could get a view in all four directions, and as far as I could see in all four directions was nothing but buildings. I could not see the end of it. It was very dystopian, and that was 2006. I mean, it's like it's getting bigger and crazier out there, and their ambitions match. So they have a plan for international. Well, I don't know if they'd ever admit that it's international trade domination, but let's be honest, that's what it is. And it's an ambitious plan. We're going to talk about it. And the reason why we're going to talk about it is because it definitely matters for a lot of, not just trade, but geopolitically. It's a threat to the United States. And so I'm going to tell you about all of the plans, what it includes, what they're trying to do, how much it's going to cost, what the duration of this project is. And then when we wrap up, America has the answer to the Belt and Road Initiative. And I assure you, you are going to find it hilarious and pathetic all at the same time. But let's start with this. So the Belt and Road Initiative was started in 2013. It's basically the centerpiece of Xi Jinping's foreign policy, right? This is essentially like, like a Marshall Plan for China. We're going to build out a ton of infrastructure. We're going to build out ports, railways, trains, you name it, shipping lanes, cargo capacities on the ports, high-speed rail, low-speed rail, communication technologies will be put in place. It's going to connect a lot of places in Asia that are currently disconnected. And I think that there's going to be some benefits to this, and I think there's going to be some massive downsides to this too. So initially it was called One Belt, One Road. So if you hear that, One Belt, One Road, you'll know you're on the same path. They sort of went through a little bit of a rebranding of this. So the Belt is for the Belt and Road Initiative actually refer to two different components of this. One is the overland component, and one is the through the sea component. Okay. And the naming of it is kind of backwards from what you would think. So the Belt is for the Silk Road Economic Belt, referring to the proposed overland routes for road and rail transportation, mostly through Central Asia areas that are landlocked. That's the Belt component. You would think that the road component would be the one that builds over the land with the high-speed rail and all of that and the roads, but you would be wrong. Actually, the road component is the 21st century maritime Silk Road, referring to the sea routes that go through Southeast Asia, South Asia, Middle East, Africa, and Europe. So, and not that it matters, but just so you know, if you're talking about the Belt and Road Initiative, the road is like the road in the ocean, I guess. I don't know. And the belt goes across. Who the fuck knows why they came up with that? But that's where there's basically two components to it: how you're gonna connect China to the rest of the world through land, and how you're gonna connect China through the oceans. And what this really sets to do is modernize China's supply chain for the next century. Really, you know, I mean, the original Silk Road was controlled for over 400 years, and it sort of went away, and new things came up, and the Dutch East India Company came around, you know, and trade changed and turned, you know, went back to the sea, and things have kind of come for full circle, and now we're back to China saying we want to do the Silk Road again. Okay, so what are the projects? Okay, this is what the project includes. It includes ports, railroads, coal burning power plants, skyscrapers, roads, obviously, bridges, airports, dams, and railroad tunnels. So it's an infrastructure project for the most part. And it's an infrastructure that includes and is dominated not just by transportation, but energy infrastructure as well. So you're going to see a lot of power plants and the like. Completion is expected by 2049. That's a ways away. Which is the centennial of the People's Republic of China's founding. So they want to have a big deal, you know, like it's going to be like their centennial, and they're going to announce that the BRI is finished on that date. Who knows? It'll get delayed and pushed off, or parts of it'll be completed and other parts won't be. But anyway, they want it done by 2049. Estimated to increase the GDP of the world by $7.1 trillion per year. That's starting in about 2040 once these the majority of the projects are already finished up. And look, it's going to be especially helpful for developing countries. This is going to allow them to have the infrastructure built out in these developing countries, but you have to be very careful about that, because we start to get into John Perkins territory when they start building out infrastructure projects in your country with money that you don't control and engineering firms that aren't from your country. You wind up being at the mercy of these people, right? So there's an economic hitman component to this whole thing that we're definitely going to talk about. And John Perkins, he came on the show and he said that he's rolling out his third version of Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and it's going to focus on the economic hitman of China targeting Africa. And what do you know? We're going to be talking about that too. So once Perkins' new book comes out, I'm definitely going to read it. I'm be curious to see how much of what I've found is in his book, because I think we see this the same way, which is be very, cautiously optimistic. Are you building out infrastructure in all these developing countries? Yes. Okay. Is that a good thing? It could be. It really could be. But you have to make sure you know who's in charge of it. China's not the most trustworthy partner. They're a lot more trustworthy than we, America, the American empire is. I assure you of that. But you can't let your guard down and just assume that everything is going to be fine. The main complaints, and of course there's going to be complaints, and they're the usual ones. This is the environmental impact. And I think that's reasonable. There's going to be a lot of construction. China is less concerned about pollution than maybe they should be. And I'm not talking climate change. We know climate change is fake. I'm talking about the actual components of pollution, which are very real. And if you've been to China or any of these big cities, it is undeniably horrible. I mean, it's tough to just kind of wander around there. You feel like you're smoking a pack of Marlboro Reds, just walking around the street. So environmental impact, a reasonable complaint. Human rights violations. Look, we just got through the 2022 World Cup in Qatar that took 10 years to build out that infrastructure project and all the things that went on there. And you had the Qatari authority saying, oh, well, 3 people died during it. And then you've got another guy who I guess wasn't authorized to speak on it. He's like, oh, I put the number somewhere between 400 and 500 people that died during the making of this. So people are going to die. Okay. And people in Qatar were being, they were importing workers from other countries and holding their passports. And that's basically like indentured slavery. So it was really bad. Again, a reasonable human rights violations, when you're talking about China rushing through and building out infrastructure projects, is it reasonable to have questions about human rights? Absolutely. Does it mean that they've broken any human rights treaties or issues already? I'm not saying they have. I'm just saying it's reasonable to keep your eye on them. And of course, I think the biggest complaint is the fear that China is using this to take over the world, or at least take over the supply chain of the world, right? So again, these aren't unreasonable questions. It's just something to keep your eye on. But look, there is a real potential for the economic hitman to set up debt traps for this project. And the Americans are already accusing China of doing that with Belt and Road. They're saying, you're just going to use this to set up debt traps. I'll get to that towards the tail end of this when I wrap up with what America's plans are for it, because Blinken tries to call out the Chinese, and it's kind of embarrassing. But again, I'm not on Team China on this, and I'm not on Team America. We're going to build our own version of this. I don't trust either side, to be perfectly honest with you. But China does have a better reputation of working with partner countries on things like this. So I've sort of said it in the past, and I'll say it again, that China builds hospitals in Africa for sick Africans, and America builds graveyards for dead Africans. Because we have a drone program that's going on in the Horn of Africa that is just murdering people left, right, and center. So, before we get on our high horse, we, the American empire, get on our high horse and call out China for possibly setting debt traps. It's like, you please go read John Perkins' book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, before you accuse any other nation of setting debt traps. It's fucking embarrassing, frankly. So, look, but they end in economic slavery. Whether we're the ones doing it or if China is actually doing it, the ending is the same. It's economic slavery. You're in debt to bankers, and look, the result, if the bankers have their way, will be neo-colonialism, the new version of colonialism. You don't have to put people in actual chains and ship them across from Africa to wherever and use them as physical slaves. You have a whole new form of slavery, a whole new form of colonialism, neocolonialism, which is the use of debt as slavery. It's colonialism in disguise caused by debt. It's really devious because the chains are almost invisible. In fact, the chains are in your wallet, which is scary. So, So the USA accuses China of setting debt traps with this, and then China accuses the USA of being the creator, the real creators of economic debt traps. And they're right. It's like America accuses China of this, and China's going, takes one to know one, right? So there are problems that, what America has done with their debt traps are expansive monetary policies, malicious short selling, interest rate manipulation for these countries that they loan money to, or the IMF and World Bank loans money to. They'll manipulate the interest rates, and just flat out economic hitman. So this is a real thing. Let's talk about this. The stated objective of the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI is the acronym. You know how I feel about acronyms. This is the objective: to construct a unified large market and make full use of both international and domestic markets through cultural exchange and integration, to enhance mutual understanding and trust of member nations, resulting in an innovative pattern of capital inflows, talent pools, and technology databases. technology databases scares me, especially when China's in charge of it, right? Well, it scares me when anyone's in charge of it, but especially China. So infrastructure. It's driven economic growth and real assets. Economic growth is predicated by infrastructure development. So if you want to have the country of Nepal that's landlocked and basically disconnected from society, if you want them to have economic growth, you are going to need to have infrastructure projects. And investors are okay with this. Investors actually, it's very appealing to them. So they're on board. This is not just public funds. There's private funds that will flow into this as well. And the project is underway already in 68 different countries with an initial focus on, it's hard to know where to start, right? Before you build all these, you're trying to do everything at once. You're trying to build ports, you're trying to build roads, you're trying to build power plants, you're trying to build airports, you're trying to build everything, right? So the project is underway and they have focused on construction materials, infrastructure investment, so money, railways, highways, automobiles, real estate, power grid, and the iron and steel industries, right? So they've got to get the infrastructure of the infrastructure ready. They've got to get the companies that will have, they've got to create power plants. They've got to create cement manufacturing facilities. They've got to create iron and steel facilities in these areas so that they can make the things that they need to make the other things that they need. So it's a massive project. They say that 65% of the world's population will be impacted by this. That's a lot of people that are going to be connected to now in America, in the United States of America, very little connection. We have almost nothing to do with this, which of course is the reason why we want to parachute in at the last minute and try and do it our own way. Like I said, I'll get to that at the end, but this is where we're headed. So it's going to impact massive amounts of the population. Obviously, China. You've got China and India, and then you've got Bangladesh and Pakistan and Southeast Asia, and you've got Africa and parts of the Middle East, and Russia. So geographically, it takes up a large percentage of the land mass and sea routes, but also just population-wise, it's the most densely populated area in the world of Southeast Asia and South Asia. I should just say Asia in general. So the project has a couple of sort of side benefits. One of the things is that it moves China away from being so dependent on the United States. I don't think America appreciates that. I think America wants everybody to be sort of dependent on them for something. And as China moves away from this dependence, I think it makes America nervous. In fact, I would say that it takes us back to the Controlled Demolition of the American Empire book, where Berwick and I do a chapter where we talk about this concept called the Thucydides trap, which is a Greek concept that talks about the rise of a new empire that challenges the existing empire. That has happened 16 different times in our recorded history, where you've had this established empire that's been chugging along for a while, and then somewhere in the world, a rival empire starts to grow up alongside it, and it starts to surpass it. And in the 16 times in which this has been the case, 12 of the times, those two empires have gone to war with each other. And we're just getting to a point where China's about to pass America, and you know how bloodthirsty that we might wind up being 13 out of 17 on this when everything is said and done. And so part of this you have to recognize is China wanting to separate itself from America, cut some of these ties and be less dependent on America for things. And I can't say that that's a bad strategy. I think China is probably doing the right thing there. And look, this also opens up brand new markets to China as well. Africa is a huge one, and we're going to talk about that. It makes raw materials that China needs. We mentioned it's the manufacturing hub of the world. But they don't have everything that they need to manufacture. So even, like we do, we have to go to Africa and mine whatever it is we're going to do. And China has the same sort of situations too, right? They have to go out and get some of these raw materials as well. So rather than invade these countries like America does, or coup or regime change like the empire does, China has instead decided, why don't we just go into business with these people? It just seems easier. So you're going to wind up having raw materials in faraway places that are way more accessible to China than they've ever been. And also, by default, that can lock out America. Doesn't necessarily mean it is, but it could. If China's controlling a region and they've got a great partnership with it, America could theoretically be locked out. Commodity-rich countries in Africa now have a willing partner to trade with them. They're now in business with the Chinese. This has been happening sort of on the down low for the last decade. But anybody that's been sort of poking around what's going on in Africa knows that the Chinese are everywhere down there. And I think some countries appreciate working with them, and I would suspect that some don't. But here's the thing. China's coming into Africa and they're saying, we'll partner with you. You know, you've got this let's just use cobalt as an example. You've got this cobalt, we need it for our electric vehicles, and you've got it. And we'll partner with you. And this sort of third world African country says, well, that's great and all, but we don't even really have the infrastructure to pull this cobalt out and move it by rail to a port in Kenya like we would like to. I mean, that would make things a whole lot easier, but we don't have the capacity to do that. And China says, we'll build it out for you. And you go, oh shit. Oh, well, okay. Well, then now we're talking. And that's what this is about. Okay. So there's access. This isn't some altruistic endeavor by the Chinese. Let me assure you, they're definitely trying to lock up resources, and I don't blame them. It's either you lock them up or the American empire will. So they're making moves in advance because they're you say what you want about the Chinese, but they're very strategic with things like this, and they take a long-term approach to it. So, I will say this though, when they're talking about building out infrastructure projects, not just in Africa, but really throughout the world, there is a downside to this. And John Perkins mentioned this when he was on. He said, because he worked for a company called Maine, which was like Halliburton, right? A multinational engineering firm. And they built these hydroelectric power plants. They do the projects that China's talking about doing here. But what Perkins said was, and he wasn't trying to necessarily defend his actions working for this company, but he said, one thing I will say is that we, the Americans and the American companies that build these massive infrastructure projects that are used to enslave these third world countries. He's saying, at least our projects work. At least they're high quality projects. Our dams don't fall down. Our power plants don't explode. He said, the thing with the Chinese is that they're good enough to get them to work, but they're not really high quality. It's like Chinese shitty stuff that you buy. Not the most precise, not the best built, just good, but not great. So anyway, so that is a downside to that. And i.e. the Three Gorges Dam is having problems already. And the thing's only been operational for like a decade, and there's already problems with it. They're like, oh, I don't know if this thing is going to last for as long as we think it is. Spoiler alert, if it doesn't last, there's like millions and millions and millions of people downstream from that will get wiped out. But that's a show for another time. So the question is, who's financing this? Obviously, China has a ton of money and they could finance this, and they are financing this to a certain extent. But there is a group that is stepping up for the bulk of that, and that is the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB, is financing this project with $160 billion, which is a lot of money, but it's not nearly enough money to get this project done. But that $160 billion went live in 2016. China has put $40 billion in to invest in a business that they call the Silk Road Fund. So it's just a fund that you can dip into for a variety of things. As an example of what that fund has been used for, they loaned $350 million to Pakistan to build a hydroelectric power plant. Sound familiar, John Perkins? And the Chinese-funded international airport in Pakistan is set to open this year in 2023. So this isn't just on the drawing board. They've been working on this stuff since 2013, maybe not the construction. Really, the construction got started in 2016, but they had to come up with all the plans. I don't want people to think that this is some project that's going to start construction 10 years from now and take another 30 years to finish. No, it's operate. I mean, there's components of it that are coming online now. This Pakistani airport is part of that. Right. So the Silk Road Fund, this $40 billion that China put in there, is going to loan money out to these countries like Pakistan and take collateral in exchange for the debt. So what do you take as collateral when you loan $40 billion, or you have $40 billion to loan and you spend $350 million on a power plant and God knows how much for this international airport? Well, you take collateral in the form of ports, rights to mines, and et cetera, things like that, tangible assets. Now, this is where you get into the economic hitman territory, because that's what they did. That's what Perkins would say. You loan this money to Ecuador. They build this hydroelectric power plant. They say, you tell them, oh, it's going to generate all this revenue. You're going to be able to pay this thing off in 15 years. You get about 5 years in, you're already behind on your payments. And they say, hey, listen, man, you promised us you would pay this and you're not making your payments. And they're like, well, it's not generating the revenue you said it would generate. Because it was never going to, because it was a debt trap. And they say, well, I don't give a shit about that. You owe us money. So what are you going to give us? Are you going to give us your ports? Are you going to give us rights to mines? In the American empire? You damn right. That's what they want. This was a loan-to-own situation to begin with. China has written it up with the Silk Road Fund that they also are using collateral, much like the Americans, ports, mining rights, things like that. The only difference is that the Chinese have never seized assets from another country under deals like this. America has. All right. So it is possible that China could be setting up an economic hitman situation there. And in fact, they have legally set up the groundwork for that in the form of accepting collateral from these countries. However, there's a couple of differences. First of all, they've never seized anything. And second of all, the loan terms are very reasonable for something like this. It's like 2% interest, right? So they're not getting rich on the money that they're loaning. This isn't an interest loan to own situation. They really want these projects to get built out. They really want them because they have much bigger ambitions. They don't want you to fall behind on your payments and screw this thing up. They want it to work because they have an interest in connecting all of these things. It's a much bigger play. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about how much money this is going to cost. You better put it on your American Express card so that you get the star points for it. You know what I mean? By 2027, which now here we are in 2023, we're talking about 4 years from now. In 4 years, it will have cost them $1.3 trillion, okay, to get to this point. And it's not even close to being built out yet. But $1.3 trillion over the next 4 years is expected to flow into this to get them on their way. Final estimates, I mean, it's a pretty wide gap, but the final estimates are anywhere from $4 trillion to $8 trillion. That's $4,000 billion on the low end to get this thing up and running. Trillion here, trillion there. Who's counting, right? So let's talk about this. Let's talk about what they're buying. What do you get for your $1.7 trillion? What do you get for that? Well, you get a variety of projects. Let's start with the belt projects, the overland portion of that. Okay. You've got one project that's called, and they just broke these out into like 1, 2, 6, like 7 different projects. Okay. This is over the land component. You've got China, Central Asia, West Asia corridor. So what does that do? That connects Western China to Turkey, right? So it's connecting the western part of China, which is very underserved right now. Most of the manufacturing and everything you see is on the eastern part of China, Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, all the way down, Hong Kong, all that stuff down down the East China Sea, where all the ports are, and the manufacturing goes out through the ports. This is taking advantage of the western portion of China. It's less inhabited, and in part less inhabited because it's less connected. So this China, Central Asia, West Asia corridor is going to connect Western China, which is a lot of it is desert-ish, to Turkey. So it's going to connect Asia to Europe. Okay. Then another project is China, Indochina Peninsula Economic Corridor. What this is doing is taking the southern part of China and it's drawing a line all the way down through Southeast Asia, down the Malaysian Peninsula, and ending in Singapore. Okay. Then another one is the New Eurasian Land Bridge. This is, again, Western China, much like the other one that went Western China to Turkey. This is, instead of going, southwest, this is going up. So this is going Western China to Western Russia. Western Russia is massive. I mean, if you look at Russia on a map, it's so wide. I think they have like 13 different time zones in the whole country, right? So it's and again, very underutilized as far as connections. So this is going to benefit not just China, but Russia. Ukraine. What have you done? You're pushing these countries even closer together, right? Then there's the Silk Road Railway. This goes from China. So this is going to go from east to west. So it's going to go China, Kazakhstan, Russia, Belarus, Poland, Germany. Again, connecting China to Germany through rail. Okay. So Silk Road Railway is what it's called. Then you've got the North China Corridor. This is the northern part of China. Maybe helps if you have a map, if you're unfamiliar with the area, you can take a look. This one goes kind of straight up from North China. It goes North China, Mongolia, eastern part of Russia. So it kind of goes up and over and sort of curves off to the eastern part of Russia. Then you've got probably the most important one, definitely the most controversial one. And this is the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. This is it's 3,000 kilometers long. It basically goes sort of down and around the Himalayas, or actually goes through the Himalayas, and down into northern Pakistan, all the way through Pakistan, connecting and ends at the Gwadar port. Okay. Now, the reason why this is controversial, first of all, is that China and India have a relationship that's good but fragile. China's developing a is developing a relationship with Pakistan, which is getting really good. They're starting to really connect. India and Pakistan hate each other. Okay, so China's doing business with both of these people and both of these sides. Pakistan and India don't like each other. So there's a little bit of controversy there. But what's really controversial about it is that China has the lease on this Gwadar port in Pakistan. And that is a big problem. And they have this lease until 2059. So they're running it. They're in charge of it. And I think that makes people uncomfortable. It's one thing to finance the construction of a port in Pakistan that the Pakistanis run and manage. It's quite another thing to have the Chinese running it and controlling it too, because now it's sort of out of their reach. And the interesting component of this is that they're looking to set up an special economic zone. And that benefits people that are operating. It's sort of an autonomous region. There's 50 special economic zones that are planned for this whole project, and they're proposed for development and industrialization. SEZ, special economic zones. It's deemed a foreign territory. That's what's interesting about it, is that when you have these special economic zones, and this corridor through Pakistan is one, then it becomes a foreign territory For matters of trade, tariffs, duties, and operations, there's different tax benefits. It's attractive to private capital, but some of the laws that currently apply in the home country don't apply in these special economic zones. So it's like a weird kind of relationship where like some of the laws of, some of the laws of that country don't apply. Like maybe the law of gravity doesn't apply there. I don't know. But they've already spent $60 billion on this Chinese-Pakistan economic corridor, and they've got even more money slated for it. So it's a collection of infrastructure projects for transportation and the energy sectors, and it's really going to be important. Then it's going to be important for economic development, but it's something that China and Pakistan have wanted for a long, long time. It also takes the ability it opens up the ability for China to create more manufacturing in the West, because then they can just take things straight down this corridor and out to a port in Pakistan that the Chinese control, and then out that direction through the Indian Ocean. So it's very beneficial to them. And the last project of the overland is the Trans-Himalayan Connectivity Network. No, it's not built by trans people, I assure you. I mean, maybe. And this connects Nepal to the rest of the world. And look, Nepal needs this connection. Nepal is the lowest rated country in the world in terms of population IQ. The average IQ, and I'm not trying to be shitty here, and I'm not trying to pretend that I know the reasons why this is, but the average IQ in Nepal is 77. And again, I'm not trying to be funny. Mental retardation is anything below 80. I think I don't think it's the Nepalese fault for this. I think they're so isolated that they're basically like living in a different era. And education, and they're educated. I think they're probably educated on different things than obviously the more modern world. So I'm not trying to shit on Nepal. I think it's sad, and I think there's room for improvement. And it's my hope that the Trans-Himalayan Connectivity takes everything in me to not say Trans-Siberian Orchestra here. I hope it connects the Nepalese to the broader world and improves the quality of life there and improves the overall intelligence there. I don't know. We'll see. Now there's a second portion, and that's the water part, the Maritime Silk Road Belt and Road Initiative. So this is the road over the water portion. Again, stop injecting logic into the naming of this. Picture the map of China, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East, right? You've got this Silk Road of ports is just all the way down the eastern seaboard of China. It's just port after port already, right? So there's not a lot of infrastructure that needs to be built out there. They've already done that. But it just continues down south. It goes to Vietnam. It goes through Malaysia. It hits Singapore. We mentioned that the infrastructure road project is going to the Indochina Peninsula Economic Corridor is going to go from southern China to Singapore on land. Well, the maritime one is also going to connect by sea, so they'll have that as well. From Singapore, it goes down through Indonesia, over to Myanmar, through India, Sri Lanka, the Maldives, Somalia, Kenya, up the African coast to Djibouti on the Horn, over through Egypt, through the Suez Canal. It connects Saudi Arabia, Israel, Turkey, Greece, Serbia, and ends in Italy. Okay, so it goes sort of up through the Suez Canal in Egypt, touches Israel, goes through that Mediterranean port, all the way up through the Adriatic and into, I feel like it's a geography test, and all the way up and ends in Italy, where it's connected there through rails that take it the rest of the way. So it's a giant like land and sea loop that it makes. The ports. So you've got this is where the ports are going to be. You've got all the existing Chinese ports. They're building one in Hanoi, Vietnam, Kuala Lumpur, Jakarta, Indonesia, Kolkata, which is India, Colombo, which is the capital of Sri Lanka, where those guys overthrew the government and then were doing backflips off of the president's railings into his pool. That was rad. Nairobi, Kenya, Djibouti, Athens, and Venice. Okay, so these are where the ports are going to be. Some of the ports are, it's not to say that there won't be other ports, but that a lot of them are already built and don't require additional infrastructure for the Chinese. So to put this in perspective, if you ask like, well, how far along are they on this project? Is there money flowing? Is there, is this a shovel ready project? What's happening? Well, they've already funded 2,970 different Belt and Road Initiative projects. So the money is flowing already. They're going to need more and they're going to get more and they're going to raise more. And this is a 30-year project, but it's there. Okay. And it's happening and it's not going to be stopped. But I would ask you though, to just take a look at this from a, put your little tinfoil hat on and get a little paranoid for a second here. If you're the American empire for sure, but even if you're just a casual observer, when China builds out all these ports with money that they've raised and sets the tone for how this whole thing is going to run, and China retains the majority of the voting rights for the Belt and Road initiatives. These other countries do have a say in it, but China has the majority of the, I think it's like 26.5% of the voting rights for this whole project. You're put in a situation where theoretically the Chinese naval fleet would also have access to these ports, right? And now we're talking Hanoi, Kuala Lumpur, Jakarta, India, Sri Lanka, Nairobi, Kenya, Djibouti, Athens, Venice. Okay, if China's building out the ports, it stands to reason that they might want to have some of their military ships there at some point in the future. Not right away, that would be too suspicious, but in the future, okay? So you have to kind of keep that in the back of your mind if you're trying to find the real downside to this, and that is that there's the opportunity for China to, sort of secretly be doing what the American empire has done through the use of economic hitmen. I mean, Perkins talked about that. Like if they fell behind on their payments to the IMF and World Bank, one of the outs was, well, you could allow us to build a U.S. military base here against your wishes, but that's what we want. So the idea of this being a debt trap to allow the Chinese to install their naval fleet at these different ports can't be underestimated. It certainly is. It's something that has been looked at. Now, whether or not they do it, that's to be seen. So, but let's look at the investment by country. This is just up through 2018. So it really got started in 2013 as far as like the plans were announced. They started going out and getting money. Then they started deploying that money in various countries to start on the early infrastructure projects that they were going to need. Like I said, the building of the cement factories that you're going to need to build the power plants that, the dams that you're going to need. So it's like the infrastructure before the infrastructure. Well, a lot of money has already been spent just up to 2018. That was several years ago. $32 billion in Pakistan, $23 billion in Nigeria, $17.5 billion in Bangladesh, $16.8 billion in Indonesia. Malaysia got almost $16 billion. Egypt's got $15 billion. United Arab Emirates has got about $15 billion. Singapore's got $24 billion. This is a ton of money flowing into these places. Russia got $10 billion. South Korea got $8 billion. And Israel got $8 billion. So there's a lot of, and when I say billion, it's like Israel got $8 billion. Israel got $8,000 million from the Chinese to start these projects. Okay. It's a lot of money, billion there, billion, you start throwing these numbers around and it sort of desensitizes you to it, but it's a ton of money. So let's talk about why. Why are we trying to do it? What are the benefits of the Belt and Road Initiative to China? We understand why America starts to get a little nervous when you hear the benefits to China. Well, China's going to have ports everywhere, okay? And I would say as a subset of that, don't forget about the intelligence networks that go along with that. If you've got a port there, you know what's coming in and going out. You can make it look like things are coming in more than they are and start conflicts. You can keep things from coming in. You can quietly move your things in and out of there, whatever. If you've got control of the ports and you have ports everywhere and you're the Chinese, then it opens the possibility that you could move assets and goods in and out of these ports. So underserved countries will be connected like Nepal and Mongolia. That's a benefit for China. Now they just opened up a couple new markets for them. Now, not that Nepal is a massive market, and obviously Mongolia is geographically next to China and has been working with China for a long time, but they're, with the exception of like the capital of Ulaanbaatar, there's not a whole lot going on in Mongolia yet, but there will be as China connects everything with these roads. So they're opening up the future markets that are geographically connected to them as well. And let's not kid ourselves. They'll owe China in some way, shape, or form. For putting in this infrastructure in their countries. So Western China will be boosted economically. We talked about that already. It's sort of underdeveloped right now. I mean, it's known most for that's where they keep the Uyghurs, so you've got free labor. If you want to be a scumbag, use those people. Here's one that I think benefits China and really makes America nervous. The Belt and Road Initiative will essentially take the Panama Canal out of the loop as far as being as necessary as it's been for the last 70 years. It's no longer going to be the only game in town. You're going to have different ways that you can reach different regions that didn't exist before, and they will exist now. China will not have to use the Panama Canal as much as it does now. And so there is a cost associated with that. And where America can sort of, America runs the canal it's the Panama Canal, wink, wink, but it's America runs that region down there where the canal actually is because we built it, like the Belt and Road Initiative. We build your infrastructure out, but we get to control it. So America knows this game because we invented the game. And when they see China doing these things, they go, oh, we know what you're doing because this is how we think. The difference is China actually, they may control it in a nefarious way, all these ports, but they may not too. It's not certain that they're going to use this the way the Americans would. It's a blow to the American empire economically, and I would say that is a benefit of the BRI for China, because anything that boosts them and weakens America at the same time, they will view as a good thing. It puts China in closer contact with many countries for trade. They already have relationships with these countries, but now they're going to have, in some cases, a direct rail line straight in. So it's really solidifying these trade partnerships that they have. It connects China to Africa in a much larger way than it currently is. It's already, like I said, they're already infiltrating Africa and doing deals and securing resources and building out infrastructure in Africa. But now they're going to have the port systems in Djibouti and in Nairobi will be very important to not just the importation of construction materials into Africa, but also the exportation of raw materials out of Africa. We've got China's construction industry is just going to dominate because they're building out all these projects. I mean, it might be joint ventures with some of the countries that they work with, but the Chinese engineering component will be there, and the Chinese firms will be driving the ship, so to speak, literally driving the ships in a lot of cases on these projects. So they're going to remain relevant. They're going to make a ton of money. Some of this money that China is investing in this, it's going to go into Chinese firms that are building it out. So it doesn't really leave China in a sense. Some of it just sort of gets recirculated back into the Chinese economy. China will be building pipelines and for oil and gas. So again, here you go. You want to start making China more independent with resources. China's already buying a lot of oil from Saudi Arabia. Well, now you develop these new pipelines and these shipping lanes, and you've got a more direct access to the oil and gas that you need. This is a huge benefit for China, a gigantic one, right? So, and of course, and Russia provides oil and gas as well, and they're building roads, rail lines, and pipelines to Russia as well. So this is going to keep China out of a little bit more interdependent on, or a little bit more independent, I should say, and able to access a variety of resources for their oil and gas. And let's talk about the currency, because this is going to be the promotion of the renminbi, the Chinese yuan. Now, this is going to elevate it. This is going to make their currency in more demand. And look, the rumor is that they're working with the BRICS countries to create a basket of currencies that are backed by gold. And if that is the case, then bye-bye petrodollar, or maybe even the petro yuan may come into existence. I think that's a real possibility. But either way, don't underestimate the role in the Chinese currency in getting a boost and becoming a bigger player on the world stage because of this. And look, 4.6 billion people live in these Belt and Road Initiative countries. That's 61% of the world's population are all going to be connected up because of this. So it's a huge project, and it has massive social, economic, and political ramifications for the next 50 years at least. BRI partner countries. We've got in Asia, there's 43 countries that are on board with this. In Africa, there's 40. In Europe, 26. In the Americas, which is North, Central, and South America, 19 countries. And in Oceania, there are 10. Okay. So it's not like there's 8 countries that are a part of this. No, we're talking about well over 100 are already on board. It's happening right now. The Asian Development Bank estimates that the developing countries in Asia will collectively need an additional $26 trillion in infrastructure investment to sustain this growth. So this is one of the reasons why people have questions about this project. They're going, you say it's going to cost between $4 and $8 billion, but that seems incredibly affordable for a project like this. Don't you mean like $80 billion? And it's like, well, yeah, probably. Or $80 trillion? Yeah, probably at some point. Yeah. Well, the Asian Development Bank said $26 trillion is needed to build out the infrastructure. But here's the thing. It doesn't all have to be built out immediately, and not everybody's going to get connected right away. This is a project that's going to take decades and decades and decades to build out. Some of this stuff will never get done. We know that, right? So, but it's ambitious. And the Chinese, say what you want about them, they are ambitious. They don't mess around with small projects. They get right into the big things. And the Belt and Road Initiative might be the biggest, most ambitious project in the history of the world, really. So I told you that at the end, I would get to what America is doing to counter this. And if you thought that I was going to say that the American empire has come up with this really intelligent, very logical, deeply rational plan to combat this, well, you would be mistaken, because I assure you it is Clown Town Central when it comes to this. So in 2019, the Blue Dot Network was created by Japan, the United States, and Australia. This is a multi-initiative, ding, 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 to provide assessment and certification of infrastructure development projects. Okay. Taiwan wound up joining as well. But again, you heard that word, didn't you? You heard the magic word, stakeholder. Oh, when you hear stakeholder, you know where we're going with that environmental horseshit nonsense, and it's coming. Network Japan, USA, and Australia, it didn't really last too long because in just 2 years later, in 2021, it wound up becoming something else. And they changed the name of it. Would you like to know what they changed the name of the Blue Dot Network to in 2021 when Joe Biden got involved? They changed it to Build Back Better World. Ooh. Build Back Better World. So remember Build Back Better America style, where it was, we're going to destroy the world, destroy the country so that we can build it back better than it was before. Remember that? And now they want to ban gas stoves, and you can't, and the border's wide open, and nobody goes to prison for murdering people anymore. And you can shit on the streets in San Francisco and nobody cares, and you can loot Target and all that. You remember all that stuff? How they're going to destroy civilization so they can build it back better? Well, they want to do it now for the world. So they named it Build Back Better World, B3W, because they're cool and they've got cool acronyms now, while they're plotting to destroy the entire planet. So what they say is that in order to counter Belt and Road Initiative and address the $40 trillion of infrastructure needed by developing nations by 2035, I should say, the B3W, Build Back Better World, globalist cocksuckers. Their four main areas of concern are you ready for this? Because it's super serious. Okay. They're really going to tackle this Belt and Road Initiative. You just heard me go on for an hour about all of the detailed infrastructure projects that China is working on with their partners all around the Asia and Middle East and Africa. And they're very serious, and they're building ports, and they're focused on trade, and they're building out roads, and they're connecting the world, and they're doing all this really important shit. Guess what the Biden administration has decided? The 4 tenets of their program are going to focus on: climate, digital technology, health and security, gender equity, and equality. They're going to build an infrastructure program on gender equality. They're so fucking stupid, it makes my brain hurt. It's supposed to be about infrastructure, and this is what they chose to focus on. They're like, well, actually, we need to really focus on gender inequality and gender equity. At the port in Pakistan, you're going to focus on? Do you think they're going to give a flying fuck about gender equality in Pakistan at the port? I don't think so. I think you're fooling yourself. I think America is a joke right now with this. But again, the Build Back Better World name, it didn't test well. I got news for you, because almost immediately it got rebranded again, because the woke agenda is just too fucking stupid for even the G7 countries to deal with. They just said, no, we have to change the name of this. So they changed it to, oh, God damn it, another acronym, Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment, PGII. I mean, I guess it's better than Build Back Better World, but not by much. And this is the United States and the G7, which is Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK, and the United States. So this is the opposition to Belt and Road Initiative, is the PGII, Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment. It's the USA, UK, Japan, Italy, Germany, France, Canada. Okay. Italy is part of BRI. They have a port in Venice. I mentioned it. They're trying to play both ends of this because they're the Italians, and they'll, politically, they'll just become fascists if they want to one decade and then drop that whenever it suits them. So Italy's playing both sides of the table on this. I don't really blame them, but this group plans to raise $600 billion in public and private funds for global infrastructure projects, specifically to counter Belt and Road Initiative. And they don't deny this. They're not like going out there saying, well, we're not trying to counter that. They flat out say it. They say, oh yeah, we're trying to counter this. For sure we are. The U.S. has committed $200 billion that it does not have over the next 5 years to this program. So you think the money is flying out the door to Ukraine? It's only been like $80 billion. The United States has signed the document to give this group $200 billion over the next 5 years for their infrastructure projects, while Flint, Michigan still drinks poisonous tap water. Just to give you an idea of the priorities of the American empire. So what's this total of 600 billion, 200 billion of which coming from America? What is it going to be used for? Well, it's going to be used in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, and all the places that have resources that the green movement needs for their batteries and electric vehicles. I wasn't kidding when I said the Democratic Republic of Congo is about to get some democracy dropped on its ass. I stand by that assertion. It's coming. So, but here's the thing. They rebranded out of the Build Back Better world to this PGII, but they didn't really change the philosophy, because again, the four main categories of concern for PGII or communications technology. I think that's reasonable. Clean energy. Here we go again. Health security and gender equality. They're back at it. Gender equality. What a joke. This is an infrastructure plan. This is an infrastructure plan that is requesting $600 billion, $200 billion of which are coming from the United States. And the four tenets of this infrastructure plan include gender equality. Why don't you just take the money and light it on fire while you're at it? Holy shit. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, have you seen her? She looks like a Bond villain. Said Europe would kick in $300 billion that they don't have as well for a, quote, sustainable alternative to the Belt and Road scheme, even though Europe is burning trees, cutting down trees and burning them in their stoves to keep warm because they don't have Russian oil and gas because they fucked up and stood with Ukraine when they shouldn't have. And this lunatic has just committed $300 billion, 300 billion euros, which, if Dmitry Medvedev is correct, will be worthless pretty soon. Remember his base prediction? He said, "Oh yeah, the euro will go away." Oh shit. Okay, I'm here. I'm listening. Yeah. So that's what we're doing. Money for African infrastructure problems, but if you live in Flint, Michigan, tough shit. But we need to fix the road. No, we don't have money for that. But the ports in Los Angeles are, no. We're really concerned about the ports in Nairobi instead. We got all the money in the world for that. But if you're in America and you need to, the Controlled Demolition book, there's a whole section on infrastructure in there, and we go through and break it down in I think there's 20 different categories. With the highest, and they're all scored A through F being failure. The highest score that the United States got in any one of those infrastructure categories was a C+. The lowest scores were obviously a bunch of Fs and D minuses. So it's not like our infrastructure is all buttoned up here at home, but we've got $200 billion to go sprinkle around on gender infrastructure, which I don't even know what that means. I'm assuming it means tranny story time in Pakistan somewhere, which will not go over well. So I mentioned that I was going to talk about Anthony. Well, I'm just going to talk about Anthony Blinken. I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but he's a disaster on wheels. I mean, this guy is trilateral. He's friends with he grew up friends with the Maxwells. He's deep state to his core, and he's not a real deep thinker either. He's kind of a dum-dum, but he was in Nigeria the end of 2021. A country that, by the way, that had $7.5 billion invested in its infrastructure just since 2018, and had, let me check my notes, $23 billion of infrastructure before, all the way up to 2018. So let's add those together and you get $30.5 billion of Chinese infrastructure money has already flowed into Nigeria. Okay. He said, while he's in Nigeria giving this speech, he said, major powers, meaning China, for too often, have been partnering with African nations on international infrastructure deals that are opaque, coercive, and burden countries with unmanageable debt. That's our job. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding about the last part. No, but that's right. He major powers, China, for too often have been partnering with African nations on international infrastructure deals that are opaque, coercive, and burden countries with unmanageable debt. That is exactly what the American empire does. The idea that Anthony Blinken is going to go to Nigeria and accuse the Chinese of doing what America has been doing for decades is laughable. And I think the Nigerians understand that too, because they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear what you're saying. I got $30 billion stuffed in my ears. What were you saying again about infrastructure project at 2% interest? So this is from a senior IMF economist that worked on African projects in the 1980s. This is from an article that I read on antiwar.com. Great spot, by the way, if you haven't bookmarked antiwar.com. We had Kyle Anzalone on. We had Scott Horton on before. It's a great place to get a good idea of what's going on in this world. But this is from this IMF economist that worked on the projects in the 80s. He said, everything we did from 1983 onward was based on our new sense of mission to have the South privatize or die. Towards this end, we ignominiously created economic bedlam in Latin America and Africa. So let's wrap it up with this. Is China the new economic hitman? Well, neo-colonialism is a new kind of colonialism that doesn't require controlling a territory, or described as, quote, the enforced conditions of imperial control without formal rule. So what it is, neo-colonialism, which is, I think, what we're talking about here when you're talking about debt slavery, it's not overt physical control, but rather covert economic control through debt slavery. We don't have to put armies, we don't have to put a tank on the street corners. We just have to control your currency, and we control you. So this is the reason why when people ask me which tentacle of this octopus I consider to be the most dangerous, and they always assume I'm going to say the military, my answer is banking. Because banking is, at least in this new form of neo-colonialism, it's the most devious form of control there is, because the slaves think they're free. So in a book from 1965 called Neo-Colonialism: The Last Stage of Imperialism, it is said, quote, neo-colonialism is the worst form of imperialism, and foreign capital is used for the exploitation rather than for the development of the less developed parts of the world. This book was written by the former president of Ghana, a guy named Kwame Nkrumah. 1 year later, old Kwame was murdered in a military coup backed by the United States of America, specifically the CIA, who financed and planned the hit. Is China the newest economic hitman? I don't know. We'll see how it folds out. I think it's unlikely, though. I think what they're trying to do is really go into business with these countries, not trying to overtly enslave them. But you know what? I guess we'll find out in 2049. If you like this episode, you can take the additional step right now of sharing it with your friends and family. You can follow me on Twitter @macroaggressions, where I yell at robots. Or you can go to the website, theoctopusofglobalcontrol.com. Thanks, everybody. I'll talk to you later.